In the spaces between silence and static, she waits. Welcome to Ghosts of Asia, where modern cities echo with ancient cries, and the dead are never truly gone. These are not legends from long ago, not distant myths told around firelight. These are stories buried in the walls of the apartments you live in, whispered through intercoms, reflected in the elevator glass. Here, in the heart of today's neon-lit Asia, spirits still walk among us. Some knock, some whisper, and some never leave. Tonight, we bring you a haunting tale of glass, water, and the unbearable weight of an unburied soul. A young woman, a forgotten room, a voice that doesn't belong to her, but speaks from her mouth. This is the story of Room 308, the spirit who was never buried. And once you hear it, you'll never walk your hallway the same way again. The late afternoon sun over Saigon cast long golden shadows through the haze of motorbikes and city steam. The air was thick with the scent of street food and gasoline, familiar and foreign all at once. For Lan, everything was both home and somehow not. She'd only been back for 2 days. After 6 years abroad, university in Singapore, then work in marketing, she had returned to Vietnam not out of longing, but necessity. Her mother's sudden death had left their family apartment empty, and her father gone, in more ways than one. Saigon's rhythms pulsed with life, but Lan felt strangely suspended, like she hadn't quite re-entered her own body. She needed somewhere new, somewhere clean, somewhere not haunted by memories. The apartment listing came through a Telegram group, private post, no images, just a message from someone named Miss Trin offering a modern unit in District 4, a high-rise complex called the Orchid Residences, barely 3 years old. Newly available unit, room 308, monthly rent $2.5 million, fully furnished, move-in ready, must sign today. Too cheap, suspiciously cheap. But Lan was used to city games. Maybe it was a scam or a sublet someone was trying to hide from the owner. Still, something about it lingered. She replied out of boredom more than interest. By evening, she stood in the lobby of the Orchid Residences, clutching a manila folder and trying to look like she belonged. The building was beautiful. White marble floors, bamboo accent walls, filtered air that smelled like lemon and mint. Young couples filtered in and out, foreigners with yoga mats, digital nomads with tattoos and laptops. The front desk receptionist barely glanced at her as she gave her name. "Ms. Lan, you're viewing room 308? "Yes, Miss Trin sent me." A pause. The receptionist didn't respond, just tapped something behind the desk and handed her a guest key card. "Take elevator B, floor 3. That was it. No smile, no welcome, not even an ID check. Elevator B stood quietly at the end of the hallway, half lit with a flickering display. Unlike the main elevator, it seemed unused or forgotten. Lan stepped inside. The interior smelled faintly of damp fabric. As she scanned the key card, the number 3 lit up, and nothing else. There were no other floor buttons, just a soft, mechanical whir and the descent of silence as the doors closed. When they opened, the hallway before her was dimmer than the lobby, slightly colder. Her footsteps echoed differently here. The lights above room 306 flickered. Room 307's door was slightly ajar. And then, room 308. It was at the far end of the hallway, a plain black door, newer than the others, with a digital lock panel glowing a soft green. It had no peephole. Inside, the apartment was perfect. White walls, Wood grain floors, a small kitchen already stocked with cutlery, the fridge hummed quietly, the windows were tinted and overlooked the canal. There was even a small shrine on the shelf, untouched but new, a bowl of fake oranges, a dusty incense holder. Everything looked unused, as if it had been cleaned for someone who never came. Lon turned slowly. No odd stains, no damage, no hidden cameras. "This is too good to be real," she muttered. She walked into the bathroom and paused. The mirror above the sink was fogged. She hadn't turned on any hot water. She checked. The air was still, the floor dry. She wiped the mirror. For a moment, she thought she saw someone behind her. But when she turned, the bathroom was empty. Miss Trin met her in the lobby 10 minutes later, a short woman in her 50s with a fixed expression that never quite became a smile. "You like it?" she asked. Her tone was clipped. Nan nodded, still half distracted. "Why is it so cheap?" "Previous tenant broke contract. Owner lives abroad, wants someone clean, quiet." "What happened to the last tenant?" "Left. Didn't stay long." The woman handed her the lease papers. "Everything's paid up for the month. Deposit waived if you sign today." Lan hesitated. Her skin prickled. She glanced back at elevator B. "Why was room 308 not listed on your website?" "It's available now," Miss Trin said, then added more softly, "but not always." There was something final in her voice, a kind of closing door. Lon signed. That night, she moved in with a single suitcase and her laptop. No friends had time to help, and honestly, she didn't want them to. Something about the apartment felt intimate, private, like it had waited just for her. She opened the windows to let in the evening air. The city buzzed below, alive with light and motion. But the room remained still, quiet. Her phone buzzed. A message from her cousin. "Found a place already? That fast?" "Yeah, crazy cheap." "Pics?" She took one. A shot of the living room, the shrine in the background. She hit send. The photo failed to upload. Then again. Failed. Network error. Weird. She switched to mobile data, sent it again. The photo finally went through, but when she looked at the preview in the chat window, her breath caught. There were 2 bowls of fruit in the shrine, and a black-haired figure squatting behind the couch, barely visible. She opened the photo. Nothing. The couch was empty. She looked again. And that's when the apartment phone rang. Not her mobile, the landline. She stared at the wall. There wasn't supposed to be one, but it was there, mounted beside the kitchen, and it was ringing, low, steady, old-fashioned. She moved toward it slowly, every muscle tight. She picked it up. "Hello?" There was no voice, just water. A soft, endless sound of rushing water, like a shower left on in another room, or a river flowing through the landline. Then a woman's voice whispered, "Why are you in my room?" Click. The line went dead. She stood frozen. Her fingers were wet. She looked down. The handle was dripping. Not sweat, not condensation. Water. Cold, clean, smelling faintly of soap and something deeper, like old river silt. She dropped the receiver, and behind her, the bathroom light flicked on. Lan woke before dawn to a faint sound, soft and steady, like breathing through water. It took her a moment to realize it was coming from the bathroom. Her mind was slow, fogged from sleep. She half expected to find the faucet running, maybe a leak. But when she pushed open the door, the sound stopped. The mirror was misted again. She hadn't used any hot water. Her reflection was faint, blurred by condensation that refused to clear even after she wiped the glass with her sleeve. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw a second reflection behind her, someone leaning forward, almost resting their chin on her shoulder. But when she blinked, it was gone. She stood there for a while, staring at herself. Her skin looked pale, her hair darker than usual. Her breath left trails of mist on the mirror. The air felt cold, damp, as if the room were inhaling and exhaling with her. The day unfolded with ordinary distractions: emails, job applications, a call from her cousin reminding her to go outside once in a while. By afternoon, Lan convinced herself that the night before had been nothing: jet lag, stress, maybe even her imagination feeding off the loneliness of being back home. But when she returned to the apartment that evening, the lights by room 307 were still flickering. A janitor was polishing the floor, his radio murmuring an old Kailung song about lost souls wandering the Mekong. Lan smiled politely. He didn't smile back. He looked up only once when her keycard beeped against her lock. Ko ở phòng 308 à? You live in 308? She nodded. The man's face changed. His mouth twitched, as if he wanted to say something but thought better of it. Then he made a small motion, his thumb brushing against his chest 3 times, a quick sign of warding off bad luck. Lan stepped inside before she could ask what he meant. That night, she tried to make the apartment feel alive. Music from her laptop, a cheap scented candle, a bowl of instant noodles that filled the air with something human. Around 9, her phone buzzed with a notification. New voicemail. She frowned. She hadn't used her phone line since moving in. The landline, maybe? She hadn't checked if it even worked after yesterday's strange call. She tapped play. At first, there was only static. Then, a sound like water dripping into a basin, slow, measured, and a faint voice under it, speaking Vietnamese too softly to make out. When she adjusted the volume, the voice grew clearer. The mirror, it's fogging again. Her blood ran cold. It was her own voice. The voicemail ended with a wet gasp. The next morning, she called the building management. No answer. She went down to the lobby. The same receptionist was there, still avoiding eye contact. "Excuse me, there's something wrong with my bathroom mirror and my landline." The receptionist cut her off. "We don't have landlines in the rooms, but none, only Wi-Fi. You can check with the service provider." Lan hesitated. She looked toward elevator B. "Is there anyone else living on my floor?" The receptionist hesitated a beat too long. "Only one? Room 307. Foreign tenant. He travels a lot." "So, room 308? What about it?" "It wasn't listed online. Why?" The woman looked down at her desk. "Some rooms aren't for public listing. Renovation schedules. You got a special deal. That's all." The finality of her tone shut the conversation down. That evening, Lan returned home and found her door slightly ajar. Her heart jumped. She pushed it open carefully. The lights were off. The air felt thicker, humid, as if someone had just showered. Her reflection in the black screen of her TV was distorted, like water rippling over glass. She turned the lights on. The TV was unplugged. She walked toward the bathroom. The floor tiles were wet. And this time, the fog on the mirror wasn't misty white. It was gray, heavy, oily. Something had been drawn into it, 5 streaks made by a hand dragging down the condensation. 5 long, uneven fingers. Her breath caught. She wiped the surface again, and the streaks seemed to vanish, only to reappear seconds later, slower to this time, as if being redrawn from inside the glass. She stumbled backward, hitting the doorframe. Her reflection trembled. There was movement behind her reflection now, like someone shifting their weight in ankle-deep water. The sound came again. Drip, drip, drip. She turned the faucet handles. Both were off. She opened the cabinet. Dry. She even checked the shower hose. No water. Yet the floor near her feet grew darker, spreading slowly. A puddle. Clear and silent, and cold enough to sting her toes. She jumped back. The puddle stopped growing. Her phone rang. Her mobile phone this time. She answered immediately, her voice trembling. "Hello?" Static again. Then a familiar, faintly distorted whisper. "Don't wipe the mirror." The call ended. She dropped the phone. Lan barely slept that night. Every creak of the pipes, every echo in the hallway made her jolt upright. At 3:08 a.m., she heard the shower turn on. She froze in bed, staring at the closed bathroom door. Steam began to curl from beneath it, slow and milky. She grabbed her phone, hit record, and whispered to herself, "It's happening again." She approached the door. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the metal handle. She reached for it. The sound of running water stopped. Then 3 knocks from inside the bathroom. Slow, wet. Knock, knock, knock. She opened the door. The bathroom was empty. But on the mirror, through the last veil of steam, a single sentence was written in dripping letters. "I'm not done." By dawn, the mirror was clear. The message was gone. But when Lan looked closely, she saw faint streaks in the glass, like fingernail scratches beneath the surface. She pressed her hand to it. The glass felt warm, almost pulsing. She whispered without meaning to, "Who are you?" From somewhere, deep in the plumbing, a woman's voice whispered back, so soft it barely existed. "You." The morning light did nothing to comfort her. Lon sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her bathroom door, still half open from the night before. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Even the usual ambient buzz of city life felt muffled, as though her unit had been sealed off from the world, a floating capsule of silence. She hadn't dreamt of the knocking. The voicemail was still on her phone. The mirror was dry now, but the words had been there, clear, wet, real. "I'm not done." Whatever was happening, it wasn't in her head. She tried to distract herself with errands, a grocery run, laundry. She even stopped at a small temple tucked between buildings, more out of instinct than belief. The smell of incense, the flicker of candlelight, the sound of chanting, it soothed something raw in her chest. The monk behind the offering table gave her a quiet nod when she lit 3 sticks and pressed her hands together. "You carry someone else's grief," he said softly, not even looking up. Lan blinked. "What?" "Someone is trying to finish dying through you." She stared at him, but when she tried to ask more, he had already turned to speak to someone else. That night, she double-checked the lock on her front door, then the windows. She unplugged the phone from the wall, though she couldn't remember plugging it in the first place. She left the bathroom light on, just in case. At exactly 3:08 a.m., the light flickered and went out. She bolted upright in bed, heart pounding. The same rushing water sound seeped through the walls, deep and rhythmic. Then, a splash. Not a drip. A splash, like something wet and heavy falling into a tub. Lon grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, and crept toward the bathroom. The door was wide open this time. The tiles were soaked. The mirror was fogged over again, except now the handprints weren't just streaks. They were pressed in from inside the glass. A pair of pale, wet hands. Fingers too long, too stiff. They didn't move, but they weren't there yesterday. She stepped closer, breath shallow. Then she saw it. Something in the drain. A small black clump. She crouched down slowly and reached toward it. Hair. Long strands, tangled and matted. Black, wet. They curled around her fingers like they were clinging to her. She recoiled and stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. The drain gurgled. Then, from the plug hole, she heard it. A choking breath. Not a groan, not a moan. A real, wet, human breath, like lungs pulling air through water. She dropped the clump. Her hand shook. The flashlight wavered across the mirror. The reflection had changed. Now, behind her, a girl, soaked, head down, her long hair dripping over her face. Water pooled beneath her bare feet. Her arms hung loose at her sides, fingers curled. She spun around. Nothing. But the bathroom floor was still wet. A second puddle had formed by the sink, and that faint smell was back, soap and river silt. She backed out of the bathroom and shut the door. The moment the latch clicked, the light inside turned back on, and the sound of the shower began again. She didn't sleep after that. The next day, she returned to the front desk. A different woman was working. Older, friendlier. She asked casually, "Can I speak to someone about my unit, room 308? The woman's smile faltered. "Are you sure that's the number?" "Yes." "Room 308 isn't usually rented. Why not?" The woman glanced around, lowered her voice. "There was a girl, a student, lived alone. They found her in the bathroom, drowned." "How do you drown in a shower?" she whispered. The woman hesitated. "That's the thing. There was no water running, but her lungs were full. The body was bloated like she'd been submerged for hours, but the tub was dry." She felt her fingers go numb. "What happened after?" "The family never claimed her body. There was no funeral. I think they didn't believe she was really dead." She shook her head. "No temple rites, no offering. Just left." Lon swallowed hard. Her voice barely escaped her throat. "Do you know her name?" The woman frowned, thinking. Then, "I think it was Nung, or New Yi, something like that." "Why?" Lon didn't answer. That evening, Lon opened the bathroom cabinet again. Inside, behind the toothpaste and cleaning supplies, was something she hadn't seen before. A thin, rotting joss paper effigy, folded into the shape of a girl, head bowed, arms wrapped around her knees, water-stained. Taped to the back was a name, written in faded ink. Nguyen Nu I, Tue Hai Mui. Nguyen Nu I, age 20. And beneath it, a single sentence. Not buried, not burned, not gone. Lan backed away slowly, hands trembling. Suddenly, every light in the apartment went out. Total darkness. She reached for her phone. The screen lit up and then glitched. A pale face flashed across it for a half second, dripping, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Then her phone died. She stood frozen in pitch black. The air was wet, heavy. From the bathroom, the sound of water returned. This time, it wasn't a gentle stream or a distant splash. It was a violent, thrashing flood, like someone drowning, kicking, fighting, gasping for air. And then, silence. Lan slowly backed into the far corner of her room, breath short. From the darkness, a soft whisper slithered through. I'm under you. She dropped to her knees, and from beneath the floorboards she heard it. Knuckles rapping, wet fingers scraping, a voice choking out her name. Lan. Lan. It echoed through the pipes, the tiles, the walls. And when she finally dared to crawl to the light switch and flip it back on, the apartment was dry, the mirror was clean, and the shower was off. But on the floor beside the bed, a single strand of long, wet hair, still warm. The next morning, Lan woke to silence. No running water, no dripping, no strange lights. The apartment felt still, unnaturally so, as if it were holding its breath. The wet strand of hair was still on her floor. She'd left it there, afraid to touch it. But now, under the morning light, it was gone, evaporated, or taken back. She didn't bother with breakfast. Her heart thudded too loudly for food. Instead, she opened her laptop, determined to find anything about Nguyen Nu Yi, the name on the paper figure. Her fingers trembled as she typed it into the search bar. Nothing. No news articles, no missing person reports, no obituary. She tried combinations. Nguyen Nu Yi plus apartment death. Student drowned in Saigon. Orchid Residences incident. Still nothing. Then she searched room 308 Orchid Residences. And that's when her browser crashed. She tried again. This time she opened the building's leasing website. Rooms available: 301, 307, 309, 315. No room 308. Not listed, not acknowledged. She clicked through the site map. Every floor plan skipped over 308, like a missing tooth in a perfect smile. She took the elevator down to the lobby, bypassing the front desk, and walked straight into the management office. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Miss Trin sat at her desk, eyes fixed on her screen. Her face was paler than Lan remembered. There were incense sticks burned down to ash on a tray by the window. Lan knocked once. Miss Trin jumped. "Oh, Miss Lan, what is it?" "I need a copy of my lease." The woman frowned. She topped her keyboard, checked a folder, then another. Her brow tightened. "That's strange," she muttered. "What?" "Your name's not in the system. I have your signed papers here, but your digital file is missing." Lan felt her stomach drop. "Check the physical registry," she urged. Miss Trin opened a binder labeled Tenants, floor 3. Her fingers flipped through the pages. Room 301, room 302, 303. She skipped a beat. Looked again. No entry for room 308. No listing, no keycard record. "It must be an error," she said quickly. "We'll fix it, don't worry." But her voice had lost conviction. Lan pressed further. "Who lived in room 308 before me?" She said no one, too fast. "Well, there was a long vacancy, renovation delays." "You told me someone left early." She looked up sharply. "I don't remember saying that." Lan stared at her. The silence hung heavy. "I need to talk to the building owner." The woman's eyes darted to the door. "He's overseas. Then give me his contact." Miss Trin stood. "I think it's best you leave the office now, Miss Lan." As Lan turned to go, she caught sight of a file sitting half open on the corner of the desk. Her own name was on the tab, but the paper inside wasn't hers. The tenant photo was someone else. A girl, late teens, black hair, pale face, blank eyes, wearing a hospital gown. The name read Nguyen Nguyi. Lan froze, but before she could speak, Miss Trin slammed the folder shut and snatched it away. "That's not for you." Lan walked out without another word. That afternoon, she returned to her unit and tried to find proof of her existence in room 308. She opened her own emails. The confirmation from Miss Trin had no subject line, no digital signature, and, now, no content. Just a blank page. Her bank transfer for her rent deposit was still pending, inexplicably held up. She tried scanning her keycard into her Buildings app. The screen blinked. Invalid room number. Her own key no longer knew her door. She felt the air thicken. The apartment lights flickered. She checked her reflection. The mirror was fogged again, and this time, her reflection didn't move with her. It stayed perfectly still, smiling faintly. Lan staggered back. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another voicemail. Hands trembling, she hit play. First came the sound of running water, then her own voice. "I live here, I live here, I live—" A pause, then a wet, low whisper. "No, you stay here, I live here." The message ended. She grabbed her things, just the essentials, keys, laptop, wallet. She didn't care about clothes. She fled down the hallway, pressing the elevator button over and over. The number above the door stayed frozen at 4. It never moved. She turned and ran down the stairs. Each flight echoed with splashing footsteps behind her, just a second too slow. When she reached the lobby, the receptionist looked up in surprise. "Leaving early, miss?" She trailed off. Her expression changed. "Sorry, what's your name again?" Lan stared at her. "You checked me in 3 days ago." The receptionist smiled politely. "I don't recall. We've had no move-ins this week." Lan reached into her bag and pulled out her ID. "I live in room 308. The woman glanced at the ID, then back at her. "That room's been sealed since 2022. Lan stood frozen in the center of the lobby as the world tilted sideways. All around her people passed, residents, staff, delivery riders. No one looked at her twice. She turned, heart racing, and exited the building into the blinding daylight. The sun didn't warm her skin. She tried calling her cousin. The phone rang once, then stopped. She called again, This time, a voice picked up. It wasn't her cousin. It was her own voice. "Hi, this is Lan. I'm not here right now. Leave a message." She stood in the middle of the street, cold despite the heat. And behind her, inside the glass doors of the Orchid residences, she saw a girl standing at the lobby window, wet hair, pale skin, staring at her. Then the lights above the entrance flickered and went out. Lan didn't go home that night. She wandered District 1 until well past midnight, sitting in cafes that stayed open too late, pretending to scroll through her phone, pretending she still belonged to the world outside room 308. But her thoughts kept circling back to one thing: the folder, the girl's face, the name, Nguyen New E. She had been real. Lan had seen her photo, pale, expressionless, the kind of face you might walk past 100 times on a university campus, a quiet kind of ghost, even when alive. And now she was the shadow in the mirror, the breath behind the door, the voice on Lan's phone. But what if Nguyen New E didn't want to haunt? What if she wanted to come back? By morning, Lan had made up her mind. She returned to the building, but didn't go in. Instead, she waited across the street, watching the lobby from the shade of a quiet cafe. A thick haze hung over the city. The air smelled like dust and exhaust and overripe fruit. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, until she saw her. An old woman in a gray ao yai, her hair pulled into a trembling bun. She was holding a small paper bag worn at the edges. Slowly, almost reverently, she crossed the street toward the Orchid residences. Lan watched as the woman stopped just inside the lobby, looked around, then walked toward elevator B. She pressed the button once, waited. Then she walked back out, looking disappointed, and she placed the bag down beside the wall. Inside it, wrapped in a faded red cloth, was a small bundle of incense sticks, a jasmine candle, and a photo. Lan crossed the street. "Excuse me." The woman turned. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused, but not surprised. Lan gestured to the bag. "Is that for someone?" The woman stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "My daughter." Lan's throat tightened. "Did she used to live here?" Room 308, before they sealed it. Lan knelt, trying to keep her voice steady. "Her name was Nguyen Yi." The woman looked up sharply. "You knew her?" Lan hesitated. "I think she's still there." They sat on the steps, sharing silence. Finally, the woman spoke. "She moved here for school, first year, only daughter. I brought her up alone. Her father died early." She paused, hands wringing the edge of her sleeve. "She was quiet, too quiet, always in books, always scared of something she wouldn't name." Lan listened, heart pounding. It felt wrong to ask, but she had to. "How did she die?" The mother's eyes filled with something beyond tears. "They found her in the bathroom, said she slipped, but the body," her voice broke. "The body was swollen, mouth open, bruised, like someone had held her down." "Was there an investigation?" The old woman shook her head. "No one cared. A poor girl in a rich building. They said no signs of forced entry, no evidence of violence. Suicide." She spat the word like venom. "But it wasn't suicide. I know my child." Lan's fingers clenched. Why didn't you hold a funeral?" The woman looked away. Her voice became smaller. "They lost the body." Lan blinked. "What?" "The morgue said they transferred it to the crematorium. But when I went, they said no one by that name had been received. And the apartment, when I came back, they said she never lived there." She leaned forward, voice cracking. "My daughter disappeared. Not just her life, not just her death, everything." Lan's mouth dried. "Then who's buried in her name?" The mother's eyes glistened. "No one." The silence felt unbearable. So Lan asked the question that had burned inside her since the first voicemail. "Do you think she's still here?" The old woman looked at her, really looked at her this time. "You've heard her, haven't you?" Lan nodded. "She doesn't want to hurt anyone. She just wants someone to know. She wants to be found, buried, remembered." She placed the photo from the offering bag into Lan's hands. It was the girl again, soaked, thin, smiling faintly beside a blooming jasmine plant. The same girl from the mirror, the same eyes. "Can I go up?" the mother asked. Lan hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't think she wants family to see her like this." The woman sighed, a long, trembling exhale. "Then please, if you see her again, tell her I'm sorry. I tried. I never stopped trying." She stood. "There's a temple in Tuduk, old, run by forest monks. They still know the old ways. If she truly wasn't buried, they may help her rest." She walked away without another word. Lan sat there long after she left. The photo burned in her hands like a secret or a responsibility. That night, she returned to room 308. The lights flickered when she unlocked the door. The scent of jasmine greeted her. The incense in the offering tray was burning, though she hadn't lit anything. And on the mirror was a message written in perfect wet Vietnamese. "I saw her. She didn't look at me." Lan stepped into the room, holding the photo tightly. She placed it gently beneath the mirror, beside the offering bowl. "She still loves you," she whispered. The mirror fogged instantly, and in the glass, her own reflection smiled, but the eyes were no longer hers. Lan had always thought sound was safer than sight. A whisper couldn't lie the way shadows could. But that was before she heard her own voice pleading from a phone she hadn't dialed. It was no longer just a haunting. It was a replacement, a slow, creeping shift, where the things she said, the things she heard, and the things she thought she knew were no longer hers. The next day, she downloaded a sound recording app. She couldn't explain why, only that the silence in the apartment no longer felt empty. It felt like something was listening, waiting for her to forget it was there. So she set her phone to record and left it beside her pillow that night. She didn't sleep, not really. Her body drifted in and out of shallow rest, jolting awake at every whisper of plumbing, every gust through the air vent. Around 3 a.m., she heard something new, a rustling, like wet cloth being dragged across tile. Then gasping, choked, rhythmic, like someone learning to breathe again after drowning. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't move. She only lay still, silent, praying that if she didn't acknowledge it, it might pass her by. At dawn, the apartment felt empty again, fake, as if nothing had ever happened. She picked up her phone. and played the recording. The first hour was static, shuffling, the occasional toss of her sheets. Then, at exactly 3:08 a.m., a sound that made her blood run cold. The shower turning on. Clear, crisp, impossible. She had checked the pipes the day before, called a technician. Nothing had leaked. Nothing had been repaired. The water system was stable. But the recording told another story. And then came her voice. "I'm cold." But it wasn't the way she spoke. It wasn't the rhythm of her breath. It sounded like land, but drained, hollow, stretched like it had been submerged underwater and pulled back out wrong. Then came something else. "Why is the floor so far above me? Why can't I move my arms? Tell her I'm not angry, just don't let me disappear." Lan froze. The voice trembled on the edge of breaking. It didn't sound angry. It sounded lost, trapped. The next thing she heard was a low gurgling, like someone speaking with lungs full of liquid. Then her own voice again, but different this time. "You never buried me." The recording ended. She sat for a long time staring at the waveform, her thumb hovering over the delete button. But she couldn't press it, because part of her needed to know it wasn't just in her head. She saved the file, and then, without really thinking it through, she sent it to her cousin. A single line of text. "Tell me what you hear." An hour later, her cousin replied, "Is this a prank? Not funny. Who's the girl in the background? Was that you crying or someone else?" Lan stared at the message. "What girl?" she typed. "The one in the background. You can hear her saying your name over and over. Then she laughs, like she's inside your room." Lan didn't respond, because in her version of the recording, there had been no laughter. Later that day, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror and studied herself. The eyes looking back at her weren't quite right. They were slightly darker, slightly wider, not wrong enough to be obvious, but off enough to feel unfamiliar. She turned her head left. The reflection turned right. She smiled. Her reflection didn't. She hit record again, this time in the middle of the day. She stood in front of the mirror and asked aloud, "Are you here with me?" Silence. "What do you want?" Silence. "Say something." The mirror fogged slightly at the edges, just a soft halo, though the air was still and a fan was on. Lan's phone recorded everything, but when she played it back, something was different. The recording didn't start with her question. It began 5 seconds before she pressed record. In that 5 seconds, there was a whisper. "I was always here." Then came her own voice, clearly asking, "Are you here with me?" And after her final question, "Say something," there was a faint laugh, low, gurgled, wet. And then her own voice again, "Do you want to switch?" Lan dropped her phone. That night, she didn't bother recording. Instead, she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling until the digital clock blinked to 3:08. Right on cue, the shower turned on. She didn't move. Not even when she heard wet footsteps crossing the floor. Not even when she felt the mattress dip beside her. A moment later, a voice, closer than ever, whispered, "She remembers me now." When Lan woke, she wasn't in her bed. She was lying on the bathroom floor. Her clothes were soaked, her hands pruned from water. The drain cover was missing. Her phone was in her palm, and the lock screen showed a new recording, time-stamped at 3:09 a.m. She hadn't opened the app. She hadn't pressed record. She played it, This time, there were no whispers, no static, no distant shower, just a girl's voice humming softly to herself. And at the very end, Lan's own voice joined in. Perfect harmony. Lan no longer trusted mirrors, or cameras, or glass. Anything that reflected her image had begun to warp just enough to make her second-guess her own face. The first time it happened, it was in the elevator. She was on her way down, only to the lobby, she told herself, just to breathe different air. The elevator was silent, aside from its usual hum and distant mechanical creaking. Then the lights flickered, the screen glitched, and the mirror on the back wall began to ripple, not with motion, but with distortion, as though the reflection were trapped behind water. She stared at her reflection, and it stared back, but the girl looking at her wasn't blinking. Then the reflection smiled. Lan hadn't smiled. After that, it began happening everywhere. In the black screen of her laptop, in the glass of her coffee cup, in the shadowed chrome of the bathroom faucet. The same face, soaked, mouth slightly open, eyes wide and distant. Sometimes it was her, sometimes it wasn't. And sometimes it started as her and slowly morphed into someone else. On the third night, she filmed herself sleeping, not with her phone this time, but with an old webcam and a laptop, separate systems disconnected from Wi-Fi, just in case. She slept with the lights on, one eye half open. The next morning, she opened the footage. Everything was normal for the first hour. Soft movements, the rise and fall of her breath. Then, the blanket shifted. Something rose beside her, slowly, like someone sitting up under the covers. But she hadn't moved. And from the edge of the frame, a pale hand crept into view, wet, wrinkled. It reached toward her face. Lan froze. The figure leaned closer, face unseen, and whispered not to the camera, but directly into her sleeping ear. "Your skin fits me." Lan slammed the laptop shut. The screen flickered one last time. Her reflection blinked, just a half-second late. The next day, she tried to call her cousin again. No answer. She called from a payphone outside the building, but the moment the call connected, all she could hear was breathing, deep and heavy, like someone submerged in a bathtub. Then her cousin's voice finally came through, crackling, frantic. "Lan, you need to stop sending me those voicemails. They're not you." "What voicemails?" "They're coming every night now. Your voice, but not your voice. You sound like you're drowning, sometimes laughing. I blocked your number. I'm sorry. I can't take it anymore." Click. The line went dead. Lan didn't even remember leaving voicemails. That night, she stared at herself in the mirror for hours, searching. Her nose looked the same, her cheekbones, the small scar near her eyebrow. But the eyes, they had grown deeper somehow, and darker, like she was staring through herself into something older. When she blinked, the reflection blinked twice. She smeared lotion on her face and froze. Her fingertips came away wet, not from the cream, but from the skin itself. Her cheeks were damp, as if she'd been crying in her sleep. But she hadn't cried. Not yet. Not until she stepped back and saw the woman behind her in the mirror. No longer shadow, no longer suggestion. There. Full. Real. Her hair hung in black ropes. Her eyes were sunken and wide, her jaw slack. Water dripped in slow trails from her chin to the floor. Her skin was bloated, colorless. Her shoulders twitched slightly, like something was still moving inside her. And when she opened her mouth, Lan's voice came out, "Stop looking at me." Lan screamed and spun around, but the bathroom was empty, except the puddle on the floor. It was shaped like bare feet, and leading from the mirror to the tub, fingerprints, slick and dark, trailing along the tile. She ran, out of the apartment, down the hallway, into the stairwell, not caring who saw her or what time it was. But when she passed the elevator on her floor, the doors slid open. No one was inside, yet in the mirrored back panel, her reflection smiled. She did not. The next morning, she received an email from a friend in Singapore. They hadn't spoken in nearly a year. "Hey Lan, are you okay? I got your message. The one with the photo? I'm not sure what filter you used, but it freaked me out. You look off." Lan hadn't sent any photo, but her friend had attached it. She opened the image. It was her, standing in the hallway of her apartment, her hair dripping wet, her mouth stretched into a subtle, broken grin, her eyes wide, dark, and staring directly at the camera. She looked like a corpse that had learned to stand up and smile. The email had been sent at 3:08 a.m. Later that day, Lan passed a mirror in the lobby and paused. She didn't look at herself anymore, not unless she had to. But this time, she couldn't help it. Her reflection stood still, expressionless. Then slowly it raised its hand, not waving, not beckoning, but pressing its palm flat against the glass, as if trying to feel the barrier that still separated them. Lan raised her own hand, and their palms touched through the glass. And she felt it. Cold, wet, real. A second hand grabbed hers from behind the reflection, and the mirror cracked. Lan avoided mirrors. She avoided her own voice. And now she avoided sleep, because when the night came, she no longer knew who would wake up in her body. It started with a power outage. She had just stepped into elevator B, the side one, the one no one else used. Her only goal, to go outside, just for fresh air, maybe to call the temple the old woman had spoken of. As the doors shut, the lights flickered once, then again, then darkness. The elevator jolted and stopped. Emergency lights bathed the interior in a cold red glow. Lan pressed the buttons. None responded. The floor panel blinked. Instead of a number, it displayed a single time, 3:08. But it was only 10:42 p.m. She pulled out her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no emergency service icon. Just a black screen, and her own reflection staring back. But the reflection wasn't mirroring her movements. It tilted its head, first left, then right, slowly, methodically, and then it smiled. The elevator groaned, and then, without warning, it began moving again, downward. But the floor numbers were wrong. They read 308, 308, 308, over and over. The walls shimmered like water. The lights pulsed like a heartbeat. and the mirrored panel behind her began to show something else entirely. Not her reflection, but a room, a bathroom, tile, white, cheap. Water pooled across the floor. A young girl stood in the center, her face hidden beneath wet, tangled hair. Her arms were shaking. Lan pressed her hand to the glass, her breath caught. The girl was Nu Yi, and this was her final night. The elevator became silent, dead. Time warped around her. And then, sound. Muted, underwater. A knock on a door. A muffled voice. "Hey, you okay in there?" The girl flinched, stepped into the bathtub. No water ran. No one poured anything. But still, her clothes began to soak, as if the tub were filling from beneath, as if the water was rising without a source. Nu Yi began to gasp, clawing at her own throat, eyes wild. Lan banged on the mirror. "Get out! Please get out!" The girl didn't hear her or didn't listen. Her body collapsed backward into the tub, arms flailing, legs kicking. Water surged, not from pipes, from nowhere. The mirror cracked, a long fissure down the center. Lan screamed. Then, darkness. When the lights came back, she was no longer alone in the elevator. There was someone standing behind her. Not visible, but present. Wet breath against her ear. A voice whispered, "You saw it now. You know what they did. They let me die." Lan turned slowly. No one was there. But the floor beneath her was wet, and when she looked down, the elevator was no longer solid. Water shimmered beneath her feet, just below the surface, like a second world waiting to be stepped into. Her own reflection stared up at her from below, dragged downward by unseen hands. Suddenly the elevator stopped. The doors opened, but it wasn't the lobby. It was a funeral room, or at least a twisted vision of one. The walls were smeared with ash. The ceiling hung low with incense smoke. A table stood at the center, covered in rotting fruit and melted candles. And on the table, a body, soaked, bloated, mouth open, skin pale and stretched, face covered by a white cloth. Lan stepped forward, drawn by something she couldn't resist. With trembling hands, she reached out, pulled back the cloth. The face was hers, but the eyes weren't. They were wide, dark, empty, and yet they blinked. Lan stumbled back. "No! No, no, no!" A voice echoed through the chamber. "I never had a funeral. I never had a name. They buried no one. They forgot me. So I became someone else." The elevator jolted. The room vanished. She was back inside, alone, soaking wet. The screen flashed once more. 308. 308. 308. Then, finally, G. Lobby. The doors opened. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Miss, are you okay?" Lan stumbled out. I was in there for an hour," she gasped. The woman frowned. "No? You just stepped in, not even a minute ago." Lan turned. The elevator was dry, untouched, silent. That night, she replayed the events over and over in her head. The girl in the tub, the water with no source, the funeral that never happened. A memory had been shown to her, but not hers, and somehow it was becoming hers anyway. She sat in the dark of her apartment, dripping wet, and whispered, "You want to be seen. I saw you. You want to be remembered. I remember you. You want to live again." Silence. Then from the drain in the bathroom, a soft voice replied, "Then let me in." It was nearly dawn when Lan left the Orchid residences. She didn't pack. She didn't turn off the lights. She simply walked barefoot into the still morning, clothes damp, eyes hollow, clutching the photograph of a girl who had died but was never mourned. The city had begun to stir, street vendors rolling out their carts, delivery men unloading bread, a monk sweeping the temple gate with practiced silence. But Lan was heading further, beyond the noise, beyond the neon towers, beyond everything that still made sense. The old woman, Nhu Yi's mother, had once spoken of a place, a temple in Tu Duc, run by forest monks who still honored the forgotten rites, the rituals whispered about in old villages where spirits were soothed not with chants but with understanding. It took Lan nearly 3 hours to reach it. First a bus, then a long walk through roads that narrowed into paths, where the concrete turned to earth and the trees rose like guardians. The temple wasn't on any map, but she felt it long before she saw it. The air shifted, cooler, stiller. A faint smell of burnt paper and river water lingered in the wind. And then through the trees, stone steps, moss-covered and winding. She climbed. At the top, nestled among banyan roots and incense smoke, was a wooden gate painted in fading red. No sign, no name, but she knew. This was the place. A monk was sweeping the courtyard when she arrived. He looked no older than 40, but his eyes held centuries. He paused when he saw her. Lan didn't speak. She only opened her palm and held out the photo. The monk took it gently, studied the girl's face. His expression did not change, but his eyes grew softer. "She hasn't crossed," he said. Lan's throat tightened. "She died, but no one buried her, no funeral, no prayers. Her body was lost." The monk nodded, then gestured toward a stone bench under a tree. They sat in silence for several minutes. Then he began. "In our teachings," he said, "when a person dies, their soul becomes confused, separated, like steam without water. The ritual, the funeral, is a way to gather the soul, to call it home and give it rest. But if there is no body, then the soul remains lost, dispersed. It cannot find the door." Lan's voice cracked. "Can it be guided back?" "Not easily, not kindly, and sometimes not at all." He brought her inside the temple. It was dark and cool. Candles flickered beside rows of wooden tablets, names carved into them, some with photos, others with only characters faded by time. The monk stopped at an altar near the back. He explained this was the nameless dead, those without graves, those whose families forgot them. We write their name if we know it. We call them, and sometimes they answer. Lan placed Nu Yi's photo on the altar. The monk lit 3 incense sticks, handed one to her. Call her. Lan swallowed. Nu Yi. The smoke curled upward. Nu Yi, Nu Yi Haimui, I see you. I remember you. A breeze stirred. The candle wavered. The monk whispered a prayer beneath his breath, low, rhythmic, ancient. Then he turned to her. She is near you already. You do not need to call her. You need to release her. How? With a ritual, not one for the living, but one meant for those who were denied death. Lan frowned. Denied death? The monk's eyes darkened. There are bodies that never rot, corpses that are preserved, not by ritual, but by trauma. Drowned souls, if unrecovered, become trapped between water and air. No decay, no release. The spirit feeds on memory, on mirrors, on names. He took a small wooden box from a shelf. Inside, a bundle of grave soil, a black silk ribbon, and a cracked porcelain comb. You must bury something of hers, symbolically, in her name, at a crossroads or beneath a tree where water once flowed, but you must do it at the hour she died. Lan whispered. 308. The monk nodded. But know this, if she has already claimed part of you, she may not let go willingly. She will not rest. She will want rebirth. Lan stared down at her hands. They looked different, paler, as if the skin weren't fully hers anymore. Before she left, the monk gave her one final item, a mirror shard wrapped in white cloth. If she resists, show her what she is, not what she wants to be. What will I see? Yourself, but unfinished. That night, Lan returned to room 308. She brought everything she needed. The photo, the soil, a strand of Nu Yi's hair from the drain, the ribbon, and her own tears, though she hadn't planned on those. She cleared the offering bowl, lit new incense, drew a salt circle on the floor, and waited. At exactly 3:08 a.m., the lights dimmed, the shower turned on, the mirror fogged, the drain gurgled, and then she appeared, Nu Yi, or what was left of her, wet, silent, head bowed. Lan didn't run. She stepped forward and held out the ribbon, the soil, the comb. This is yours. The entity raised her head. Her face flickered between Lan's and something bloated and blue. She took a step forward. Lan held up the mirror shard. This is you. The entity froze. For a moment, there was recognition. Not sadness, not peace. Desperation. She lunged again. Lan shouted the name. Nu Yi, Nu Yi, Haimui, rest now. The lights burst, the air turned to water, and in that suspended breath of drowning, Lan buried the items at the base of the shrine. The candles flared, the entity screamed, not with hatred, but with heartbreak. And then, silence. The mirror cleared, the water receded, and Lan was alone. Truly alone. For the first time in weeks, Lan slept. No whispers, no footsteps, no breathing in the walls. Just silence. And when she woke, the apartment felt clean, empty. almost peaceful. The mirror was dry, the floor silent. No messages, no puddles, no fog. She stepped into the bathroom and touched the sink. Warm. Normal. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "It's over," she whispered. The next few days passed in quiet fragments. She did laundry, cleaned the floors, ate real food, even called her cousin, who, for the first time in weeks, picked up without hesitation. "You sound like yourself again. I feel like myself again," Lon said, smiling. She didn't mention the ritual, the soil, the mirror shard, the moment the spirit vanished like steam from glass. Some things were too hard to explain, even to those who loved you. The only lingering trace was a faint scent of jasmine now and then, especially near the shower drain. But it didn't feel threatening anymore. More like a memory, a gentle one. But then, on the fourth night, her phone buzzed. New voicemail. Timestamp 3:08 a.m. She hadn't made any calls, hadn't left her phone on. Lon's stomach twisted. She hesitated, pressed play. First, there was silence. Then her own voice, whispering, "She's still here." A soft laugh followed. Wet. Wrong. Then static. The message ended. She checked the call history. No outgoing number. Just a recording. From inside her phone. Her hands trembled. "Maybe it's old," she told herself. "A glitch. A leftover file. Just old data." She deleted the message. But then, on the fourth night, when she opened the fridge, all her food was gone. In its place, a bowl of rotting fruit. She hadn't bought it, hadn't seen it before. And next to the bowl was a folded piece of incense paper, burnt at the edges, blank, except for a single fingerprint, wet and black. Lon returned to the temple the next day, but the path was gone. She followed the same road, the same trail, but there were only trees, brush, mosquitoes. No gate, no steps, no monks, just an empty hill. She searched for hours. Nothing. The temple had vanished. That night she tried something she hadn't done in weeks. She looked through her phone gallery, scrolling back to the earliest photos she had taken when she first moved in. But now, all the pictures of her apartment were blurry, warped, as if shot through water. And in every single one, a second figure, faint, just behind her, half reflected in windows, crouched near door frames, eyes always fixed on her. Lon's face, too, looked different in them. Bloated, pale. In one photo, she wasn't smiling, but her reflection was. She ran to the mirror, stared at her own eyes. "I buried you," she said aloud. "You're gone." The lights flickered. The mirror stayed clear. But the moment she turned her back, she heard herself say, "No, you buried yourself." The next morning, her name tag on the apartment mailbox had changed. Instead of Nguyen Lon, it now read Nguyen Ue. She stared at it, tore it off. Inside her mailbox was a funeral invitation for herself. Date, this Friday. Time of death, 3:08 a.m. Lon's memory began to fray. One evening, she opened the fridge to find food she didn't remember buying: fish sauce, fermented shrimp paste, jasmine tea, things her mother used to cook with, things she hadn't eaten since she was 10. She smelled her mother's hair when she passed the hallway, heard the clink of chopsticks in the sink, but she lived alone. She tried calling Ms. Trin, the agent who gave her the lease. The number didn't exist. She tried searching for the Orchid Residence's website. Gone. She searched for herself. Nothing. It was as though her entire digital existence had been erased. That night, she stood in front of the mirror with her old ID in hand. She stared at the photo. It showed a girl with bright, alert eyes, healthy skin, straight posture. She looked up at her reflection. Her skin was paler, her posture slouched, her eyes deeper, darker. She whispered, "What's happening to me?" From the mirror, the answer came, spoken in her own voice, just slightly off. "We're finishing what they never did." Lan's alarm rang the next morning. She sat up slowly, checked the time, 3:08. But it was daylight outside. The clock blinked. She walked to the window, and instead of the cityscape, there was a canal, still water. No buildings, no cars. She was somewhere else. Somewhen else. She blinked, and the city returned. But her face in the glass did not. It stayed behind, smiling faintly. Later that day, her cousin sent her a message. "Where did you go? They said no one lives in room 308. She replied, "I do." But the text bounced back. Number not recognized. She checked her own voicemail that night. There were 10 new messages, all recorded at 3:08 a.m. She played the most recent one. It was her, not speaking, sobbing. The kind of sobbing that comes from deep beneath the lungs, from someone who is drowning inside and out. And beneath it, a whisper. The loop begins. She dropped the phone. In the bathroom, the mirror fogged. Words appeared in wet script. "You buried her. Now there's space for you." She turned, and in the mirror, her face was gone. Only New E remained, staring out, smiling. The first time it happened, Lon thought it was a dream. She was talking, or at least she thought she was, reciting something. A prayer? A name? But the voice wasn't hers. It came from her mouth, but the tone, the breath, the cadence, they didn't belong to her. She woke up with her lips moving, speaking words she didn't understand. A language that sounded like Vietnamese, but wasn't. Old dialect, old words. The kind of phrases used only in temples and chants and the final moments of a funeral. She tried to dismiss it. One bad dream, that was all. But the next day, her neighbor knocked on her door. A man from room 307, one of the few tenants who rarely spoke. He looked pale, sweating. "Did you need help last night?" he asked. Lon blinked. "What do you mean?" "You were standing in the hallway at 3 a.m., just staring at my door. You didn't blink, you didn't say anything. And then you started humming." He shuddered. "Like a lullaby. It made my dog bark for an hour." Lon tried to laugh it off, but her chest was tight. She hadn't left her bed last night. Had she? That evening, she checked her phone recordings. There were new audio files, 6 of them, all time-stamped between 3 and 3:08 a.m. She hadn't pressed record. She hadn't even unlocked her phone. She played the first, breathing, then whispering, then her voice, soft, eerie. He didn't open the door. Why didn't he open the door? The next file. I used to braid my hair at the window. The birds would sing back. No one sings now. The third. A single line, spoken in Yui's voice, but using Lan's mouth. If I say her name enough, will she give me back my face? Lan deleted all 6 recordings. She tried to speak out loud, just to hear her own voice. I am Lan, she whispered. But the words didn't sound right. The vowels were stretched. The tone too soft, too delicate. It wasn't her voice anymore. She went to a cafe the next day, just to get away. When she ordered coffee, the barista froze. Sorry, he said awkwardly. You sound like someone I knew. Lan smiled politely. Who? He died, he replied. A girl from my school. Quiet type, always wore her hair long, never spoke above a whisper. Lan left without the coffee. Back in her apartment, her voicemail lit up again. She hadn't given out the number, didn't even remember setting it up. She played the message. A male voice, weak, tired. Lan, are you okay? You called me last night. You were crying, but it wasn't you. I don't know how to explain it. You saw my face in the video call, but it wasn't your eyes. I swear to God, it wasn't your eyes. You just kept saying the same thing. I'm not Lan anymore. Lan threw the phone across the room. She stood in front of the mirror again. No fog, no messages, just her reflection. But when she smiled, the reflection didn't. Instead, it stared, expressionless, detached. And then it whispered with her lips, "Your body fits better than mine ever did." She began writing things she didn't remember writing. Notes in her journal appeared overnight. Phrases like, "She wears me now," "My mother didn't look at me," "They forgot the flowers," "Drown me in your breath," and once, "Her voice is quieter than mine. That's why she lasted longer." She tore out the pages, but new ones returned the next day. She tried recording herself again, speaking simple sentences. I am Lan. I'm 26 years old. I live in room 308. But when she played it back, the recording said, I am Yui. I am 20 forever. I never left. Her voice, her lips, but someone else inside them. She visited the building management one last time. The office was empty. Dust coated the counter. The lights were off. No receptionist, no records. She walked to the back room, door slightly ajar. Inside, she found dozens of lease folders, all with missing pages. No records for room 308, but one file sat open. Her name at the top, Nguyen Lan. Below it, scratched out in pencil, correction, New E. That night, she spoke to herself in the mirror. You had your moment. You were seen, you were remembered. Why won't you go? and the voice answered without moving her lips. "Because now I am loved. You gave me your name. Now I can live again, and you can rest." Lan backed away. Her throat burned, her hands trembled. She tried to scream, but the sound that came out was not hers. She began to forget. Little things at first. What day it was, what her favorite color used to be, what her voice sounded like before the water. Then bigger things. Her mother's name, the city she was born in, why she came back to Vietnam in the first place. One morning, she looked in the mirror and whispered, "Who are you?" And the girl in the reflection smiled softly. "Don't worry, you'll forget that too." Rain had followed her for 3 days. Thin, colorless, relentless. The kind of rain that seeps through walls, not to soak you, but to remind you that nothing is truly sealed. Lan barely ate, barely slept. Her voice, or what was left of it, no longer sounded human when she whispered. Every word scraped against her throat like salt on an open wound. She knew what she had to do. The monk had warned her once, "If she has claimed part of you, the ritual must be done in reverse." She would have to bury the dead girl again, not her body, but the part inside herself. She prepared through the night. A cracked porcelain bowl, a handful of grave soil taken from the temple altar weeks ago, 3 sticks of incense, and salt, coarse, white, sacred. She scattered it across the floor of her apartment, marking a circle that enclosed the mirror, the drain, and herself. Every step echoed faintly, as though the walls were listening. "This is not your body," she whispered. "This is not your home." But her reflection only smiled, that soft, familiar smile that now belonged to Ni Yi. At exactly 3:08 a.m., the lights dimmed. The mirror fogged from the inside. The scent of jasmine thickened the air. Water began dripping from the ceiling, slow, deliberate, 1 drop at a time, landing perfectly inside the salt circle. The voice came next, calm, measured, imitating her own tone. "You brought me soil. You think you can bury me again?" Lan gritted her teeth. "Not bury you, free you." "Free me? You wear my face. You breathe my air. You called me here." The words rolled like thunder beneath the floorboards. The reflection began to move without her, hands rising, mouth opening wider and wider until it wasn't a face anymore, just a wound filled with water. Lan lit the incense and pressed her palms together. Earth to ground the restless, salt to seal the gate, soil to return the body. Her voice quivered, but she continued reciting the prayer the monk had half forbidden her to learn. Each line grew heavier, dragging through the air as if gravity itself resisted it. The drain hissed, the puddle spread across the tiles, and from that black mirrored surface, Ni Yi began to rise. Not as shadow, as flesh, pale, rippling, soft like wet clay. Lan stepped back, but the salt circle burned her feet, the barrier cutting both ways. She was trapped inside with the thing she had summoned. "You're not me," Lan gasped. I am what's left when no one remembers. The mirror splintered. Fragments slid outward, hanging in the air like shards of light suspended in water. Each shard reflected a different image, a dozen versions of Lon, each drowning in silence. She tried to read from the chant again, but the words twisted inside her mouth. Blood ran down her tongue, thin, metallic, sacred. The reflection spoke through her lips now. Salt cannot cleanse what never decayed. Soil cannot hold what was never found. The candles around her sputtered. The flame turned blue. Something moved beneath the floor, a pulse, a heartbeat. The building groaned as if the whole structure remembered what it had buried. Lon clutched the mirror shard the monk had given her. It trembled in her hand, hot, alive. She turned it toward the figure, forcing Ni Yi to see herself. For a moment, everything froze. The ghost recoiled, eyes wide, horrified by the reflection of her own death. The mirror's surface rippled, showing flashes of her final moments. Water in lungs, hands clawing tile, a door that never opened. Lon screamed over the noise. "It wasn't me! I'm not the one who forgot you!" "No, but you moved into the room that did." The glass shattered in her grip. Lon fell to her knees. The soil spilled from the bowl, dark and damp, though it had been dry when she brought it home. She pressed her palms into it, smearing the mud across the tiles, drawing the old symbol the monk had carved for her, a spiral of return. By earth and water, by name and voice, you are bound, you are released. The ghost knelt opposite her, same gesture, same motion, two bodies mirroring one another. Then together they whispered, "We are one." The lights went out. When they flickered back, the apartment was calm, the floor dry, the air thin and bright. In the mirror, only Lon remained. No fog, no shadow, no second face. She touched her cheek, warm, alive. Then she smiled, the first real smile in months. But as she turned away, the reflection lingered a moment longer than it should have. And in that reflection, the lips kept moving, silent words, mouthing something she couldn't hear. She swept away the salt, washed her hands, and watched the water swirl down the drain. The smell of jasmine was gone. For the first time, she believed she had done it, freed the spirit, ended the curse. She sat by the window till dawn, exhausted, half dreaming, letting the city wake beneath her. At sunrise, her phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Timestamp, 3:08 a.m. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then she pressed play. Her own voice spoke. "The ritual worked. She's gone." A pause. Breathing. A faint laugh. But I stayed. The sun rose, but Lon didn't feel it. The light poured through the windows, painted the floor gold, warmed the skin on her arms, and yet her breath still fogged in the air. The cold hadn't left. It had only gone deeper, inside. That morning she found water pooled beneath her bed, not from a leak, not from a dream. Still, quiet, as if it had risen from the floorboards themselves. She stepped barefoot into it, and the room shifted, The walls breathed, the window blurred, and in a blink, the world changed. She wasn't in her apartment anymore. Not really. The floor was tiled, old and cracked. The air was thick with incense smoke and mildew. The light was pale, flickering, as if filtered through dirty water. Lon turned in a circle. She knew this place. The bathtub, the curtains, the smell of jasmine and mold. Room 308, but not as it was, as it had been. The mirror reflected a younger girl, thin, quiet, face half covered by wet hair. Nhu Yi, alive. Lon tried to move forward, to speak, to reach out, but her body didn't respond. Instead, she moved like a passenger in someone else's skin. Her fingers brushed the curtain. Her voice, soft and trembling, whispered, "Maybe they'll come today." She turned to the door, waited. Nothing. She ran the shower. Steam rose. Water clattered against the tile. She stepped inside, slowly, fully clothed, sat beneath the spray. The water turned cold, then stopped. Nhu Yi stared at the wall, at nothing, at everything, and whispered, "Please, remember me." The water beneath Lon's feet began to rise. Not fast, not loud, but constant, like the tide coming home. She blinked. The room twisted. Suddenly, she was standing in front of the mirror, her reflection back to being herself, Lon. But the walls behind her were no longer real. They were glass, a tank, and it was filling. Her breath caught. She turned. The door was gone. She banged on the glass. "Let me out!" Nothing. The water reached her ankles, then her knees, then her waist. She screamed, but it echoed, dull and distant. "This isn't mine! This isn't my death!" A voice bubbled up from the deep. "But you stepped into it." Time unraveled. She found herself reliving the same moments over and over. The steam, the curtain, the sound of the elevator outside, the knock that never came, the silence that followed. Every cycle grew shorter, sharper. Her skin paled, her eyes hollowed. She stopped feeling the water, stopped feeling her limbs, stopped remembering who she was before room 308. In one loop, she saw herself, her real self, on the other side of the mirror, staring in, helpless, mouth moving, screaming, weeping, but trapped outside. A bystander to her own possession, the ghost now inside. Lon clawed at the glass. "Take her instead! Take me back! Take me!" And the reflection smiled. A voice whispered from the ceiling, the floor, the drain. "This is what you wanted. You let her in. You said her name. You gave her your voice. Now she has your breath. Now you have her death." The water rose past her neck. She gasped, gurgled, reached upward, fingers desperate to breach the surface, but found only glass. Behind the mirror, her apartment shimmered like a memory, just out of reach. And then everything stopped. Silence, darkness, weightlessness, like falling asleep forever. Then, a sound, a voice, faint, echoing through waterlogged ears. "Lon, Lon, wake up!" Light, blinding. Her eyes opened. She was lying on the bathroom floor, soaked, gasping. Her cousin stood over her, pale with panic. "Jesus, Lon, what happened? Why's the water on?" Lon tried to speak. Her throat stung, her chest heaved. "I was gone." He wrapped her in a towel, pulled her up. But when she passed the mirror, she paused. Her reflection blinked back. But only one eye blinked. The other stayed open, too wide, too still. She leaned closer. The reflection whispered, but her mouth didn't move. "Next time, you stay." The building management sealed room 308 without ceremony. No fumigation, no press release, just a quiet notice slipped under the doors of neighboring units. Renovation. Room 308 closed until further notice. Maintenance access only. Do not attempt entry. No one asked questions. Most residents didn't even know anyone had lived there recently. Some claimed the room had been sealed for years. A few, when pressed, remembered a girl with quiet eyes, a girl who smiled too little, or maybe too late. Weeks passed. The hallway outside room 308 remained dimmer than the rest of the floor. The motion sensor lights always took a second longer to flick on. The walls there stayed cold, the air faintly damp. Some nights, residents swore they heard the sound of a shower running. At 3:08 a.m., every time. One morning, the receptionist at the Orchid Residences found a voicemail on the building's main landline, time-stamped at 3:08 a.m. There were no incoming calls listed. She played it. The recording was soft, water in the background. Then, a voice. Female, young, calm. "My name is Nguyen Nhu Yi. I lived here once. I think I still do." A pause. "If someone new moves in, tell her I'm not angry. Tell her she doesn't need to fight me. I just didn't want to be forgotten." The message ended. The receptionist deleted it. But that night, as she turned off the lobby lights, she saw a figure in elevator B. Thin, still, hair wet, pooling across the tiles, facing the mirrored wall. When the doors opened, no one was inside. 3 months later, the building changed ownership. The new management company reopened several units, including 308. The listing went live online with fresh photos, a virtual tour, and a promotion for first-time tenants. Modern studio, canal view, exceptional rate. No one noticed the photo showed the mirror slightly fogged. No one asked about the strange watermark in the corner of the bathroom tiles, faint like a smudged fingerprint. No one noticed the small altar tucked in the shadows above the kitchen cabinets. A week later, a new tenant moved in. Young, new to the city, looking for a quiet place to think, to work, to be alone. He smiled as he unpacked, loved the silence, the stillness. Around midnight, he stepped into the bathroom and flipped on the light. The mirror was fogged. He hadn't turned on the water yet. He wiped the surface with his palm. His reflection smiled back. But just behind it, another face, softer, still, watching. The next morning, his phone buzzed. New voicemail. Unknown number. No timestamp. He pressed play. The recording was soft, water in the background. Then, a voice. Female, young, calm. "My name is Nguyen Nhu Yi. I lived here once. I think I still do." A pause. "If someone new moves in, tell her I'm not angry. Tell her she doesn't need to fight me. I just didn't want to be forgotten." The message ended. Room 308 is empty now, but it remembers. The walls still breathe. The mirror still fogs. The drain still gurgles. And at 3:08 a.m., someone always whispers, "My name is..." But the rest is drowned.